India is the birthplace of many religions popular today, such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. Although most Indians were converted to Christianity in the 16th century by the European missionaries, the most popular religion today is Hinduism. Christianity was said to be very popular in India before the European men came to colonize, being brought to the lands over 2,000 years ago by an unknown apostle. Over 80% of the Indian population will refer to themselves as Hindu today. The hierarchy system in India was physically there, but not written by law. The idea of social mobility was popular, but in order for anyone to move up the social scale, an entire group, including yourself, adopted a more wealthy lifestyle. The hierarchy was based off of impurity versus purity. This was because rank is based off birth. For instance, being born into a family of wealth gave you a social boost. This type of purity hierarchy was very popular in South Asian scholarship and became a recurring problem of power. In the 18th century, the ideal man was one that participated in the traditional native activities, such as hookah smoking, living closely with their family, and having a local woman in their life. When the European men began to come over from Europe, the interracial relationships between the native women and the European men began to occur, making their children Anglo-Indian. Before colonial rule, people lived in extended families. A son when married didn't move out of his parents' home. Instead, the wife moved in with the husband. She was expected to work for the husband and his family. They had very few rights and were expected to obey their father until married, and in the event that their husband died, they were expected to obey their father-in-law. The official language in pre-colonial India was Hindi, but there were 18 other languages recognized by the Indian government. The language often varies by the family and social class. Along with the different languages, there are different kinds of script recognized by the Indian government. Pre-colonial India featured rich religious and cultural diversity. This came from the many invading armies, traders, and immigrants that brought their own cultures to India. In most regions of India, there was a strong sense of family and community, so each region had different cultural-based festivals and celebrations. This unique aspect created a wide range of cultures that could vary from village to village.
Political system of India prior to colonization was a monarchy. Kings had sovereignty over a territory. They functioned as its protector, a role which involved both secular and religious power. The meaning and significance of kingship changed dramatically throughout India's history. Over time, the king evolved from the equivalent of a tribal chief to a fully divine god king, on whose sacrifices the kingdom depended for prosperity and on whose legislation society depended for order. Before the arrival of the British, much of the population lived in villages and they maintained a predominantly agricultural economy. Farmers did not usually live on their land but went to the fields daily to work the land to provide food for the villages. Villagers were also able to pay their taxes with their produce.
The men that came to colonize the lands of India were from Great Britain. Colonization began in 1757 and ended in 1947. In the first half of the century, the British were a trading presence at certain points along the coast. From the 1750s, they began to wage war on land in eastern and southeastern India and to reap the reward of successful warfare. The main changes which the British made in Indian society were at the top. They replaced the wasteful warlord aristocracy by a bureaucratic military establishment, carefully designed by utilitarian technocrats, which was very efficient in maintaining law and order. As far as the mass of the population were concerned, colonial rule brought few significant changes. The British educational effort was very limited. There were no major changes in villages, society, in the caste system, the position of the untouchables, the joint family system, or in production techniques in agriculture.
British involvement began early in the 17th century through the British East India Company and its business ventures and dealings. They had begun to set up trading posts in several Indian cities such as Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. From 1813 to 1858, India was converted into a source of raw material in the market for British goods. And from 1858 and onward, finance imperialism took over in which British capital began to control Indian banks, foreign trading firms, and managing agencies in India. This exploration was carried out through many economic policies, primarily through the industrial and agricultural sectors of the colonial economy of India. One of the most positive results that came out of the British conquest of India would be the political and administrative union of India after the fall of the Mughal dynasty. A new rank of landlords surfaced, who considered land as their own private property and wanted to take complete control over the maximum financial gain they could get from their ownership of it. They were farmers who basically were regarded as tenants and could easily be evicted from the land if they were told so. The colonization of India by the British Empire led to several wars between the growing factions in India and the British Empire. This is definitely considered one of the bad aspects of the colonization due to the many lives lost and the quality of life for people in warring regions. With Great Britain thinking they were doing a great deed, the Indians did not agree with this thought. However, the colonization process did not only change the culture of India, but it also affected Great Britain. Colonization increased the diversity of culture in Great Britain because many people from India started to move to Great Britain. Today, Great Britain is still home to many Indian people. While the Indians were forced to put in the most work in order to establish a successful country, they could barely enjoy the work they put into it. They were being treated as inferiors in their own land. They weren't allowed to have any government authority and barely had any rights. They received lower salaries compared to European workers in the same job. And the education system did nothing to help them. The Indians finally came together to stand against the poor treatment they were getting. They seemed to be influenced by the same sense of nationalism that caused the British to colonize India more than a century before. After much hard work, India